The grand chamber floated in the darkness of space, like a jewel made of light and metal. Inside, representatives from 47 different alien species sat in their designated positions. Some breathed oxygen like humans did. Others existed as clouds of gas, held together by magnetic fields. A few were crystalline beings that thought in patterns of light. This was the Star Senate, the government of the galaxy, and it had ruled for 50,000 years. Ambassador Chen Wei stood at the speaking platform in the center of the chamber. She was a small woman by human standards, barely 5 feet tall, with gray streaks in her black hair. She wore the formal uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, a simple blue suit, with the symbol of humanity's united government on her shoulder. Around her, thousands of alien eyes watched. Some were curious. Most were bored. A few looked at her with something that might have been contempt. "Honored senators," Chen began, her voice amplified throughout the massive space. "Humanity has served as a probationary member of this Senate for 30 years. We have followed every rule. We have paid every tax. We have contributed our technology, our art, and our resources to the galactic community. Today, we formally request full membership status." She paused, looking up at the tier where the most powerful species sat. The Vectar occupied the highest position crystalline beings that looked like walking sculptures made of diamond and colored glass. They were ancient, some of them over 800 years old. Next to them sat the Zesic, a hive-mind species that appeared as thousands of small, insect-like creatures moving together as one consciousness. On the other side were the Luminari, beings of pure energy contained in elegant mechanical suits. High Chancellor Vectorum, the leader of the Vectar and the head of the Senate, leaned forward. His crystalline body refracted light into rainbow patterns. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind chimes mixed with distant thunder. "Ambassador Chen," he said slowly, as if speaking to a child. "Your species has indeed been enthusiastic in its participation. However, the Senate must consider many factors when granting full membership." Chen felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her face neutral. She had practiced this moment for months. "We understand, Chancellor. We believe our record speaks for itself. Human scientists have contributed 17 major technological breakthroughs to the galactic database. Our artists have shared our culture freely. Our traders have established fair commerce with 32 species. We have never violated Senate law." "Technically true," said Senator Kresh, a reptilian being from the Kraith Dominion. His forked tongue flickered as he spoke. "But facts and readiness are not the same thing. Tell me, Ambassador, how long does your species live?" Chen knew this question was coming. The current human lifespan averages 120 years. A ripple of what might have been laughter moved through some sections of the chamber. Senator Kresh continued, 120 years. I myself am 470 years old. The Chancellor is approaching his 900th year. How can we trust important decisions to beings who barely live long enough to understand consequences? We may live shorter lives, Chen replied carefully. But we learn quickly. Humanity went from primitive agriculture to spaceflight in only 10,000 years. Exactly the problem, interrupted a senator from the Chicks Collective, a floating blob of semi-transparent tissue. You move too fast. You change too quickly. Your planet was at war with itself just 200 years ago. You fought each other with nuclear weapons. We learned from those mistakes, Chen said, her voice harder now. We united. We grew. Isn't the purpose of civilization to evolve past our worst impulses? High Chancellor Vectorum raised one crystalline hand, and the chamber fell silent. Ambassador Chen, let us be direct. Your species lacks certain qualities that we consider essential for full Senate membership. You have no psionic abilities. Your biological forms are fragile and prone to disease. Your culture is young and unstable. And yes, your history of violence concerns us greatly. Captain Sarah Okonkwo sat in the observer's gallery, wearing the dark uniform of Earth's military. She was a tall woman, with sharp features and calculating eyes. As she listened to the Chancellor's words, her hands gripped the armrests of her chair hard enough to make her knuckles pale. Next to her sat Admiral James Kowalski, a gray-haired man with more combat experience than most of the Senate's species had ever seen. "They're going to reject us," Okonkwo whispered to the Admiral. "Yes," Kowalski replied quietly. "And they're going to regret it." The vote took less than an hour. One by one, the species cast their decisions. The results appeared on holographic displays throughout the chamber. 39 votes against full membership, 8 votes in favor. Humanity would remain as observer status for another century minimum. High Chancellor Vectorum stood to make the closing statement. His crystalline body caught the light from the chamber's artificial star, making him glow like a god. "Ambassador Chen, the Senate has spoken. We do not believe humanity is ready for the responsibilities of full membership. Perhaps in another century, when your species has matured, when you have learned the arts of proper civilization and understood the true nature of galactic society, we will reconsider. War, for instance, is an art that requires centuries to master. You have barely begun to understand its complexities." Chen bowed her head, following protocol. But as she turned to leave the speaking platform, she caught Admiral Kowalski's eye. He gave her the smallest nod. They both understood what this meant. As the session ended and the various species began to leave the chamber, Senator Kresh approached the Chancellor. "Do you think they will accept this peacefully?" he asked. Vectorum's crystalline laugh echoed through the chamber. "They have no choice. What can they possibly do? They are children playing at civilization. In time, they will understand their place." In the human delegation's ship, Chen removed her formal jacket and sat down heavily. Okonkwo and Kowalski joined her. "Well," Chen said bitterly, "we tried it their way." "Yes," Kowalski agreed. "We did. And now, we know exactly what they think of us." "What do we do now?" Chen asked, though she already knew the answer. Kowalski looked out at the stars through the viewport. "Now we show them what children can do when you back them into a corner. They want to lecture us about war? About civilization? They're about to get an education they'll never forget." The ship turned away from the Star Senate and began its journey back to Earth. Behind them, the ancient species congratulated themselves on handling the young race so wisely. None of them noticed the dangerous quiet in the way the humans had left. None of them understood that they had just made the worst mistake in 50,000 years of galactic history. They had underestimated humanity. That error would prove fatal. 3 months had passed since the Senate rejected humanity's petition. On the colony world of New Horizon, life continued as it had for 15 years. The planet was beautiful. 2 moons hung in purple skies, and vast oceans covered 60% of its surface. 2.3 million humans called this world home now. They had built cities along the coastlines, farms in the fertile valleys, and schools where their children learned about both Earth and their new home. Maria Santos stood on the balcony of her apartment in New Horizon City, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. She was a teacher at the local school. Her husband worked at the terraforming facility that helped make the planet's atmosphere more comfortable for human life. Their daughter, Anna, was 6 years old and had never seen Earth. This was the only home Anna knew. Maria sipped her coffee and smiled. Then she saw the ships. They appeared in orbit like dark stars, dozens of them, their hulls reflecting the morning sun. They were massive warships, each one bristling with weapons. Maria's coffee cup slipped from her fingers and shattered on the balcony floor. Within minutes, every communication device on New Horizon received the same message. The voice was harsh and alien, translated by computers into human languages. This world now belongs to the Kraith Dominion, by right of Senate Law. Section 447. Paragraph 12. Worlds may be claimed by species demonstrating superior development capacity. All human presence is illegal. You have 48 hours to evacuate. Any who remain will be removed by force. The message repeated every 10 minutes. Maria ran inside, her hands shaking as she called her husband. Did you hear it? Did you hear the broadcast? I heard it, he said, his voice tight with fear. I'm coming home. Get Anna ready. Pack only what we can carry. Across New Horizon, the same scene played out in millions of homes. People packed their belongings with shaking hands. Some cried. Others moved in, shocked silence. Parents tried to explain to confused children why they had to leave everything behind. On Earth, Ambassador Chen Wei stormed into the Senate's communication center. She had aged in the 3 months since the rejection. Dark circles hung under her eyes. Emergency session, she demanded. The Kraith are invading New Horizon. This is a direct violation of Section 447, Paragraph 12. The Senate clerk interrupted calmly. He was a small, furry creature with too many eyes. The Kraith filed the proper paperwork 6 weeks ago. The claim was processed according to all Senate regulations. There are 2.3 million people on that planet. Chen shouted. 15 years of settlements. How can some ancient law override the lives of actual citizens? The law is clear, the clerk said, looking at his datapad without emotion. Humans have observer status only. You do not have the legal standing to challenge territorial claims by full member species. 1. Chen felt something break inside her. Then, I want an emergency session with the full Senate. Now. The session lasted 20 minutes. High Chancellor Vectorum listened to Chen's appeal with the same patient tolerance one might show an upset child. Ambassador, the Kraith have followed proper legal procedure. The Senate cannot interfere in matters of legitimate territorial claims. Legitimate? Chen's voice cracked. They're forcing millions of people from their homes at gunpoint. Senator Kresh, the reptilian Kraith representative, spread his clawed hands. We are being most generous. 48 hours is ample time for evacuation. We could have claimed the planet immediately upon proper filing, but we allowed your people time to prepare. This is an act of war, Chen said. No, Vectorum corrected gently. This is a legal matter, properly resolved according to Senate law. Had you been a full member species, you might have had legal recourse. As observers, you do not. Perhaps this will serve as a lesson in why membership requirements exist. The vote to dismiss Chen's appeal was 41 in favor, 6 against. The session ended. Chen stood alone in the empty chamber after the senators left. Her hands trembled. Her carefully maintained diplomatic composure finally cracked. She wanted to scream, to break something, to make them understand what they were doing. Instead, she sent a single encrypted message to Earth. They won't help. Recommend Directive Omega 7. On New Horizon, the evacuation was chaos. Millions of people rushed to spaceports, carrying whatever they could. The colony had enough ships to evacuate maybe half the population in 48 hours. Maybe. The colonial government worked frantically to organize the evacuation. Priority went to children, elderly, and medical cases. But there simply were not enough ships. Maria managed to get Anna onto an evacuation transport. You're going on an adventure, she told her daughter, trying to smile. Daddy and I will be right behind you. Anna held her favorite toy, a stuffed bear made on Earth. Promise? Promise, Maria lied. As the evacuation ships lifted off, crowded far beyond safe capacity, the Kraith warships moved into attack positions. A warning shot, they called it. A beam of superheated plasma cut through one of the evacuation transports. The ship broke apart. Debris rained down on New Horizon City. 847 people died in seconds. Anna's transport survived. Maria's daughter lived. But 847 other people's children, parents, and loved ones burned in space. The Kraith commander, Warlord Texkar, sent another message. This is what happens when deadlines are not respected. You have 36 hours remaining. On Earth, the Emergency Council met in a bunker deep beneath the Swiss Alps. Admiral Kowalski stood before the President and the military command staff. On the screens behind him, footage from New Horizons showed burning debris and terrified refugees. The Senate issued a stern rebuke to the Kraith, Kowalski said, his voice dripping with contempt. They called the destruction of the evacuation ship unfortunate but technically within legal parameters, since a warning was issued. 847 of our people are dead, and they call it unfortunate. The president of Earth's united government was an old woman who had spent her entire life working for peace. She looked at the images of burning ships and made her decision. "Recall Ambassador Chen," she said quietly. "Madam President," one of the council members said nervously. Omega 7 means we're abandoning the Senate's authority structure. We're declaring that we'll act independently of their laws. Yes, the president said. It does mean that. The Senate has shown us exactly what they think of human lives. They want to treat us like children? They want to teach us our place? She looked at Admiral Kowalski. They keep talking about teaching us about war. I think it's time we showed them what students we've been. We've had excellent teachers ourselves. And humanity's worst lessons have always come from watching what we can do to each other. Kowalski smiled grimly. I'll prepare the response fleet, Madam President. Captain Sarah Okonkwo received her new orders while on patrol near Jupiter. Her small destroyer was one of only 89 military ships in humanity's entire fleet. She read the orders twice, then called her bridge crew to attention. Course change, she announced. We're heading to New Horizon. We're going to show the Kraith what happens when you murder human civilians and think we'll just accept it. Captain, her first officer said quietly, the Kraith have 40 warships there. We're one destroyer. I know, Okonkwo said. We won't be alone for long. The entire response fleet is being mobilized. 12 ships, total. The first officer went pale. 12 against 40? Okonkwo's smile was cold and sharp. They think numbers matter. They think they understand war because they've played at it for thousands of years, following rules and traditions. They're about to learn what real war looks like. The kind humans invented when we had nothing but each other to fight. We learned every dirty trick, every horrible tactic, every way to win when you're outnumbered and outgunned. She looked at her crew. They wanted to see what humanity could do. Now they'll see exactly that. The ship turned toward New Horizon. Behind it, 11 more human warships gathered, preparing to jump to faster-than-light speed. They were outnumbered more than 3-1. Their ships were smaller. Their technology was newer, less tested, but they were angry. And they were human. And they were done asking permission from people who saw them as nothing more than inconvenient children. The Kraith warships hung in orbit around New Horizon like predators circling wounded prey. Warlord Texkar sat on the command throne of his flagship, the Time's Eternal Fang **. He was old by Kraith standards, 470 years of combat experience. He had won 17 major battles and crushed 23 rebellions. Today would be an easy addition to his record. Status on the human evacuation? He asked his second-in-command. They continue to load their ships, Warlord. Approximately 60% of their population remains on the surface. Time remaining. 4 hours. Thexkar's forked tongue flickered with satisfaction. The humans would not finish evacuating in time. They would beg for extensions. He would grant small mercies, demonstrating the Kraith's superiority and generosity. It was all very predictable. Lesser species always behaved the same way. Warlord, the sensor officer suddenly called out. Multiple, faster-than-light signatures. Detected. Ships emerging from jump space. How many? Thexkar asked, unconcerned. Probably more human evacuation ships. 12 signatures. Reading them as military vessels. Human design. Thexkar stood up, his scales rustling. Military? They dare send warships? He laughed, a hissing sound. Open communication channels to these fools? Captain Sarah Okonkwo's face appeared on his view screen. She sat in the command chair of the Times Wellington *, Earth's newest destroyer. Her expression was calm and cold. "I am Warlord Thexkar of the Kraith Dominion," he announced. "You are interfering in a legal territorial claim recognized by the Star Senate. Your presence is a violation of Senate law. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." "This is Captain Okonkwo of the Earth Defense Force," she replied evenly. "You murdered 847 civilians. You have threatened 2.3 million more. Your legal claim can go to hell. You have 2 minutes to withdraw your forces from this system." Thexkar's laugh echoed through his bridge. 2 minutes? Little human? I command 40 warships. You have 12 tiny vessels. Do you not understand mathematics? "We understand it fine," Okonkwo said. "Do you understand history? Every war humans ever fought. We were outnumbered. We got good at it. 2 minutes starts now." The channel closed. Thexkar turned to his fleet commanders. "Battle formation Delta 7. Traditional honor engagement. We will destroy these impudent children and broadcast the footage across the galaxy. Let all species see what happens when you challenge the Kraith Dominion." The Kraith fleet arranged itself in a classic formation, 3 walls of ships, the largest in front to absorb damage while the smaller vessels maneuvered for attack positions. It was a formation perfected over 10,000 years of warfare. Every species in the Senate used variations of it. It was considered the most efficient combat arrangement possible. Okonkwo watched the Kraith formation assemble on her tactical display. She smiled. "They're actually doing it," her weapons officer said quietly. "They're using a standard Senate formation." "Of course they are," Okonkwo replied. "They've fought the same way for thousands of years. Everyone in the Senate follows the same rules: minimize civilian casualties, honor challenges, formation warfare, proportional responses. They think war is about honor and tradition." She keyed her communication to all 12 human ships. "All vessels. This is Okonkwo. Execute Plan Chaos on my mark." On the Times Wellington's Times tactical display, the human ships scattered in 12 different directions. No formation, no pattern. Complete disorder. On the Times Eternal Fang *, Thexkar's officers looked confused. "Warlord, they're not forming up. They're just spreading out randomly." "Fools," Thexkar said. "Without formation, they have no mutual support. They make themselves easy targets. All ships. Pursue and destroy at will." That was exactly what Okonkwo wanted him to think. The human ship Times Thermopylae *, commanded by Lieutenant Marcus Chen, dove straight toward New Horizons' larger moon. 3 Kraith warships pursued, thinking they had cornered him. But Chen knew exactly what he was doing. He calculated the moon's gravity well, the velocity of his ship, and the mass of the pursuing vessels with the precision of someone who had studied physics in school and orbital mechanics in the military. At the last possible moment, the Times Thermopylae fired its emergency thrusters and slingshot around the moon at an impossible angle. The 3 Kraith ships tried to follow. Their captains had never attempted such a maneuver. It was considered too risky, too unpredictable. Their ships slammed into each other in the gravitational chaos, hulls rupturing, systems failing. Chen swung back around and fired his railguns into the debris field. The metal slugs, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, punched through the Kraith shields like they were paper. Senate species designed their shields to stop energy weapons, plasma beams, lasers, particle cannons. Nobody used simple kinetic weapons anymore. They were considered primitive. 3 Kraith warships died in less than 20 seconds. Across the battle space, similar scenes played out. The Times Agincourt Times under Captain Williams used electronic warfare to blind a group of 5 Kraith ships, then broadcast false targeting data that made them fire on each other. The Times Marathon Times led 8 ships into an asteroid field. knowing exactly which rocks to hide behind and which paths to take. The Kraith, following traditional pursuit tactics, flew into ambush after ambush. On the Times, Eternal Fang Asterisk, Thexkar watched in growing horror as his fleet died around him. What are they doing? This isn't how battle works. They're not following any recognized tactics. They're cheating, his second-in-command said, panic in his voice. In war, Okonkwo's voice came over the open channel. There's no such thing as cheating. There's only winning and dying. The Senate species forgot that. You've played at war for so long, you forgot what it really means. The Times, Wellington Times, fired a spread of missiles that the Kraith sensors identified easily. The missiles were basic, using simple chemical propulsion and conventional warheads. The Kraith point defense systems shot them down effortlessly. While they were distracted, the real attack came simple rocks, mined from New Horizons' asteroid belt, accelerated to relativistic speeds by magnetic launchers. Just chunks of iron and stone, traveling so fast they became weapons of mass destruction. They hit the Kraith formation like the fist of an angry god. Shields that could stop plasma and lasers simply didn't work against solid matter moving at that velocity. The kinetic energy was devastating. Thexkar's flagship rocked from impacts. Fall back. All ships fall back. But Okonkwo had anticipated that too. 6 human ships had circled around behind the Kraith fleet during the chaos. Now they attacked from the rear, targeting the slower command ships where the admirals and warlords directed the battle. In 4 hours of combat, the Kraith Dominion lost 34 ships. 6 more were captured when their crews abandoned them in working escape pods, following Senate protocols for honorable surrender. The humans had no such protocols. They simply boarded the vessels and took them. The human fleet lost no ships. The Times, Thermopylae Times, had moderate damage. 2 other vessels had minor hull breaches. That was all. Warlord Thexkar found himself imprisoned in his own brig, guarded by human marines who looked at him with cold, professional contempt. Captain Okonkwo came to speak with him personally. You fought without honor. Thexkar hissed at her. Without tradition. You used ambush, deception, weapons that violate the spirit of civilized warfare. We fought to win, Okonkwo said simply. That's the difference between you and us. You fight to look good. We fight to survive. You've had thousands of years of peace, fighting little wars that followed rules and traditions. We had 200 years of total war on our own planet. We invented every terrible thing you can do to an enemy. We know what real war looks like, Warlord. And we decided we never wanted to do it again until you forced our hand. She turned to leave, then paused. You wanted to teach us about war. Congratulations. You reminded us exactly how good we are at it. The news reached the Star Senate within hours. Emergency session was called immediately. The galaxy watched in shock as footage of the battle played on every news feed. A human fleet, outnumbered more than 3 to 1, had destroyed a Kraith task force in less than 5 hours. High Chancellor Vectorum's crystalline hands shook as he watched the recordings. This is barbaric. They fought like animals, like savages. They fought like soldiers, Admiral Kowalski said. His image appeared on the Senate's communication system. Broadcast from Earth. You wanted to see what humans could do, Chancellor? You're seeing it. And this is us being restrained. We could have done much, much worse. You will stand down immediately, Vectorum demanded. You will surrender your fleet for war crimes investigation. You will. Vectorum. No. Kowalski said simply. We're done taking orders from people who let our civilians be murdered for legal convenience. New Horizons stays ours. If anyone else wants to try to take it, they're welcome to join the Kraith at the bottom of our target list. The transmission ended. In the Senate chamber, 47 species sat in stunned silence. They had spent 50,000 years believing they understood war, believing they were civilized because they had rules and traditions. Now they realized they had been playing games. And humanity had just shown them what real war looked like. The emergency Senate session lasted 3 days. Ambassador Chen Wei was not invited. The 47 species debated in closed chambers, trying to decide how to respond to what they called the human problem. On the 4th day, they reached their decision. The vote was 41 in favor, 6 against. The Star Senate would assemble a coalition force to pacify the human threat and restore galactic order. 7 species committed military forces to the coalition. The Kraith wanted revenge. The Vectar wanted to preserve their authority. The Cheeks Collective feared what would happen if other species learned they could ignore Senate rules. 4 other species joined because they genuinely believed humans were dangerous savages who needed to be controlled. The fleet that gathered was the largest military force assembled in 12,000 years, over 400 warships from 7 different species, each one larger and more advanced than anything humanity had ever built. The coalition commanders met and planned their campaign with absolute confidence. The humans have 89 military vessels total, General Krixnar of the Vectar announced to the Planning Council. His crystalline body reflected the holographic displays of fleet positions and attack routes. We have 437. We possess superior technology, superior experience, and superior numbers. This will be concluded in 3 weeks, 4 at most. What about their tactics at New Horizon? Asked Commander Velshara of the Luminari. They fought in ways we did not anticipate. Ambush and deception, Krixnar said dismissively. Tricks that work once. We have studied their battle and adapted our defenses. They caught the Kraith by surprise. They will not surprise us. On Earth, Admiral Kowalski stood in the war room, looking at the same intelligence reports the Coalition thought were secret. Human hackers had infiltrated Senate communication networks weeks ago. The Coalition's plans, ship movements, and strategies were all laid out on his displays. 437 ships, his chief of staff said quietly. Admiral, we can't win this. Not in a straight fight. Good thing we don't fight straight, Kowalski replied. He turned to his command staff. Initiate protocol. Scorched Earth. Evacuate all non-essential personnel from border colonies. Fortify the core worlds. And activate every dirty trick we've ever invented. Captain Okonkwo, now promoted to Commodore, led the defense of the Tau Ceti system. She had 12 ships under her command, facing a coalition force of 60 warships. The odds made her smile grimly. Remember, she told her captains on the secure channel. They think they're coming to pacify dangerous savages. Let's show them exactly how dangerous we can be. The coalition fleet entered the Tau Ceti system in perfect formation, following a battle plan that had been approved by 16 different command councils. They expected the human ships to either flee or try another desperate ambush. Instead, Okonkwo's fleet simply disappeared. Where did they go? General Krixnar demanded from his flagship. Unknown, General, his sensor officer replied. They were here, and then nothing. No faster than light signatures. No debris. They just vanished. The coalition fleet moved deeper into the system, searching for the humans. They found the first minefield 3 hours later. Simple nuclear warheads hidden in the asteroid belt, triggered by proximity sensors. Nothing fancy. Nothing high-tech. Just weapons that humans had invented 800 years ago. The explosions destroyed 4 ships and damaged a dozen more. Mines? Krixnar said in disbelief. They're using mines? Nobody has used mines in space warfare for 5,000 years. Apparently, humans didn't get that message, his second-in-command said nervously. The coalition fleet pressed forward, now scanning carefully for more mines. That's when the cyber attack hit. Human hackers had been inside the coalition's communication networks for weeks, waiting. Now they activated viruses and worms that corrupted navigation systems, created false targeting data, and crashed life support systems at random intervals. Ships collided with each other as navigation computers failed. Weapon systems fired at phantom targets. Panic spread through the fleet as systems that had worked perfectly for centuries suddenly became unreliable. "This is impossible," Krixnar shouted. "Our networks are secured with quantum encryption. The humans have quantum computers too," his technology officer said weakly. "They've been working on cyber warfare for their entire history. It's how they fought each other on Earth. I mana. Something's offers a now. Those, Oleway, and a script to the Pada, by that is not hundreds off." While the coalition fleet struggled with malfunctioning systems, Okonkwo's ships attacked. They didn't try to win a direct battle. Instead, they hit supply convoys. They destroyed fuel depots. They attacked repair ships and medical vessels. They targeted everything except the main battle fleet. "They're not even fighting us," one coalition captain complained. "They're just harassing us, destroying our supplies, running away when we engage. It's guerrilla warfare," Okonkwo explained to her captains. After another successful raid, the Senate species fight set-piece battles with clear goals and honorable engagements. We fight dirty. We make every day in our space cost them more than they can afford to lose. On the colony world of New Harmony, the coalition landed ground forces, expecting to occupy the planet quickly. They found the cities abandoned. The humans had evacuated completely. Then the attacks began. Improvised explosive devices hidden in buildings. Sniper fire from unexpected angles. Booby traps that used technology so simple, it didn't register on their advanced sensors. The coalition troops were trained for honorable ground combat between organized military forces. They had no experience with insurgency warfare. "They're not soldiers," a Kraith ground commander reported. "They're civilians. Shop owners, farmers, teachers. But they're fighting like trained guerrillas. Every human is a potential soldier." Admiral Kowalski had told the resistance cells before they evacuated. "You've watched enough Earth history to know how this works. Make them afraid. Make every building, every street, every empty room a potential threat. They want to occupy our worlds? Make them pay for every meter." The biological weapons were what finally made the coalition realize how far humans were willing to go. They weren't lethal. Humanity had learned those lessons on Earth and sworn never to use such things again. But the engineered viruses and bacteria were tailored to each species, causing temporary but severe incapacitation. The Kraith forces found themselves violently ill, unable to fight for days. The Vectar discovered their crystalline structures, developing harmless but embarrassing cracks. The Chicks Collective's ships filled with a bacteria that ate their nutrient gel, forcing them to withdraw for resupply. "This is a violation of every convention of civilized warfare," Senator Luminari protested in an emergency Senate broadcast. "We never signed your conventions." Earth's response came back. "We never agreed to your rules. You invaded our space. You threatened our civilians. You wanted to teach us our place. Well, we're teaching you something too. Never fight a species that spent most of its history perfecting ways to kill itself." 3 weeks into the campaign, the coalition had lost 40 ships to human tactics. Not in glorious battle. Not in honorable combat. They lost ships to mines, to cyber attacks, to supply line interdiction, to guerrilla raids, and to their own confusion as their technology was turned against them. The Zesic hive mind was the first to withdraw. Their collective consciousness analyzed the situation and reached an inescapable conclusion. "This species fights as a unified organism," the Zesic announced to the Senate. "They coordinate across vast distances, without a hive mind. They adapt instantly to changing conditions. They have no honor. When Zesic, no traditions, no rules, only survival and victory. We understand this. We ourselves think this way. But they are better at it than we are. We will not fight them." The Zesic fleet withdrew completely, leaving a gap in the coalition's formation. In the Senate chamber, High Chancellor Vectorum watched as casualty reports mounted, and member species began questioning the campaign. The human fleet had barely engaged in direct combat. Yet the coalition was bleeding ships, resources, and morale. How? He asked himself, looking at the tactical displays. How are we losing to 89 ships? Ambassador Chen Wei, watching from Earth, could have told him. The Senate species had forgotten what real war meant. They had thousands of years of ritualized combat, following rules and traditions that made warfare predictable and limited. Humanity had 200 years of total war, where entire populations fought for survival, using every weapon, every tactic, every horrible trick that desperation could invent. The Senate species were playing chess, humanity was fighting for its life, and there was no comparison between the two. They still don't understand, Chen said to Admiral Kowalski as they reviewed the latest reports. They think war is about honor and formations and superior technology. Let them keep thinking that, Kowalski replied. The longer they take to figure it out, the more time we have to make this too expensive for them to continue. In the Tau Ceti system, Commodore Okonkwo's fleet had just destroyed another supply convoy. Her ships were battered and low on ammunition, but her crew's morale was high. They were outnumbered. They were outgunned. But they were winning. Next target? Her tactical officer asked. Okonkwo smiled. The coalition command ship is planning to transit through the Barnard star system tomorrow. I think we should welcome them. With mines. Lots of mines. The war ground on. The coalition kept trying to fight a traditional war. Humanity kept refusing to cooperate, and slowly, inexorably, the greatest military force assembled in 12,000 years began to realize it was fighting an enemy it did not understand and could not defeat. 6 months after the coalition invasion began, General Krixnar sat in his damaged flagship and stared at the casualty reports. 167 ships lost, not destroyed in glorious battle, lost to mines, cyber attacks, supply interdiction, guerrilla raids, and a dozen other methods that weren't supposed to exist in modern warfare. Thousands of soldiers dead or injured. Morale was collapsing. 3 more species had withdrawn from the coalition in the past week. We need to withdraw, his chief advisor said quietly. We outnumber them 5-1, Krixnar said, his crystalline hands crushing the armrest of his command chair. How can we be losing? Because they're not fighting the war we planned for, the advisor replied. Every engagement costs us more than we can afford. Every victory is Pyrrhic. We hold 3 human colonies now, but occupying them requires a third of our fleet, and the insurgency kills more of our soldiers every day. Meanwhile, they raid our supply lines at will. In the Senate chamber on Concordia Prime, moderate voices grew louder. 6 species had opposed the war from the beginning. Now they were joined by others who questioned the campaign's wisdom. This has to end, Senator Velshera of the Luminary announced to the assembled chamber. We have lost over 160 ships. The humans have lost 12. 12. This is not warfare. This is slaughter of our forces by an enemy we do not understand. High Chancellor Vectorum refused to attend the session. He remained in his private chambers, unwilling to face the reality of what was happening. Ambassador Chen Wei received a communication request from the moderate faction. For the first time in 6 months, someone from the Senate wanted to talk peace. What are your terms? Senator Velshera asked when they spoke privately. Chen looked at the Luminary representative for a long moment. 6 months ago, she would have begged for reasonable terms. 6 months ago, she would have compromised. Now, she had watched the coalition kill 31,000 human civilians in the occupation zones. She had watched Earth cities prepare for invasion. She had watched her species fight for survival with everything they had. Full Senate membership, Chen said flatly. Complete military autonomy. The Kraith cede 3 border systems as buffer zones. Full reparations for New Horizon and all other colonies damaged in this war. And an acknowledgement, in writing, that the coalition's invasion was illegal and unjustified. That's Those are not negotiation terms, Velshera said in shock. Those are demands from a victor. Yes, Chen agreed. You're outnumbered. You're outgunned. You've lost a dozen ships and thousands of lives. How can you make such demands? Well, because we're still here, Chen said simply. Because 6 months ago, you thought you would crush us in 3 weeks. Because every week this war continues costs you more than you can sustain. Because right now, Commodore Okonkwo has 3 human ships in orbit above Concordia Prime, and none of your sensors detected them until I told you they were there. Velshara's energy form flickered with shock. That's impossible. The Senate headquarters has the best defensive system in the galaxy. Check, Chen said. It took 3 minutes for the Senate security forces to confirm it. 3 human destroyers were in orbit, having bypassed every sensor, every defense, every detection system that protected the Senate's neutral world. Admiral Kowalski's image appeared on the Senate's emergency communication system. He sat calmly in the command chair of one of those ships. Behind him, through the viewport, the Senate chamber was clearly visible from orbit. "Good afternoon, Senators," Kowalski said pleasantly. "I wanted to demonstrate something. These 3 ships could destroy this entire station in approximately 14 seconds. We have the targeting solutions locked in. We have weapons. Armed." The Senate chamber erupted in panic. Security forces scrambled. Shields powered up. None of it would matter at this range. "We're not going to fire," Kowalski continued. "Not because we can't, not because you could stop us, but because we choose not to. You think strength means using every advantage you have. We know strength means having the power to destroy, and choosing peace instead." 1-1. 1-1-1-1-1. He leaned forward. "You tried to teach us about war. You tried to show us our place. You failed. We know more about war than all of you combined because we spent centuries perfecting it against ourselves. We know every terrible thing that can be done. We've done most of them. And then we decided, as a species, that we never wanted to do them again." High Chancellor Vectorum finally emerged from his chambers. His crystalline body looked dimmer somehow, less radiant. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice tired. "I already told your Senator Velshera," Chen said. "Full membership, military autonomy, reparations, and an apology. Action. Action. And if we refuse?" Vectorum asked. "Then this war continues," Admiral Kowalski replied. "And I promise you, we can keep this up longer than you can. We're not trying to conquer you. We're just trying to make it too expensive for you to attack us. Every week costs you ships, resources, and credibility. Every week costs us too. But we're fighting for survival. You're fighting to save face. How long do you think your coalition will hold together?" The vote came 3 days later. Ambassador Chen Wei stood in the Senate chamber, the same place where she had been rejected and humiliated 6 months ago. Now she stood as a representative of a species that had proven it could not be ignored. The vote was unanimous. 47 in favor, 0 against. High Chancellor Vectorum had resigned the day before. All of humanity's demands were met. 47. Vectorum. Full membership is granted to humanity, the new interim chancellor announced. All territorial disputes will be settled through proper diplomatic channels. The coalition's invasion is formally condemned. Reparations will be paid. HFY. HFY. Humanity accepts Senate membership, Chen said formally. But then she deviated from the prepared script. "However, we decline a seat on the ruling council at this time." Confusion rippled through the chamber. Species fought for council seats. They were the ultimate symbol of power and prestige. "We'll earn that through trust, not conquest," Chen continued. "We've proven we can fight. Now we'll prove we can be trusted. We'll participate as equals, follow the laws we agree to, and build the relationships we should have had from the beginning. But we'll do it on our terms, not because you graciously allow it." 5 years passed. Ambassador Chen Wei, now Earth's senior senator, stood at the same speaking platform where she had once been dismissed. It was the anniversary of human membership, and she had been asked to speak. 5 years ago, you called us primitive, she began. Violent, unworthy. You were right about the violence. We've known it intimately. We've perfected it. We've done terrible things to each other in our history. But that's precisely why we understand what you had forgotten. War is not an art. It's not about honor or tradition. It's about survival, destruction, and the terrible things people do when they have no choice. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from species that had once dismissed humanity as children. You thought you were civilized because you'd forgotten how to truly fight. You'd turned warfare into a game, with rules and traditions. We're civilized because we remember what real war means, and we choose peace anyway. Every human knows what our species is capable of. We learned it by fighting ourselves for thousands of years, and that knowledge, that terrible, intimate knowledge of violence, is what makes us work so hard for peace. She paused. You wanted to teach us about war, Chancellor Vectorum once said. You thought we were children who needed lessons, but you were the ones who needed to learn. You needed to remember that war isn't about formations and honor challenges. It's about survival. It's about doing whatever it takes to protect your people. And when you threaten someone who truly understands that, you don't get a civilized response. You get what we are. Survivors who learned every hard lesson our own history could teach us. The Senate had changed in 5 years. New protocols for conflict resolution had been established. With human input, military doctrine had been revised. The casual arrogance that had defined Senate culture for millennia had been replaced by something more cautious, more respectful. Commodore Okonkwo, now promoted to admiral, commanded the Joint Defense Force, a fleet drawn from multiple species, using tactics that combined Senate technology with human strategic thinking. She sat in her office on a station orbiting Earth, looking at reports from training exercises. Her second-in-command, a Vectar officer named Kixlar, entered with the latest results. Admiral, the joint exercises are complete. The Kraith squadron performed exceptionally well using the new tactical protocols. Good, Okonkwo said. How are they adapting to the less structured combat doctrine? With difficulty at first, Kixlar admitted. But they're learning. We all are. The crystalline being paused. Admiral, may I ask you something personal? Go ahead. Why did you spare us? Your ships were above Concordia Prime. You could have destroyed the Senate, ended the war completely. Why didn't you? Okonkwo smiled sadly. Because we're not conquerors, Kixlar. We're not even warriors. Not really. We're just people who got very, very good at fighting because we had no choice. We learned every terrible lesson about war by inflicting it on ourselves. And the most important lesson we learned is this: winning the battle, but losing your humanity is the worst defeat of all. She looked out at the stars. The Senate thought we were dangerous because we were violent. They were wrong. We're dangerous because we know exactly how violent we can be, and we choose not to be. That choice, that constant decision to be better than our worst impulses, that's what makes us strong. End quote. I think I understand, Kixlar said quietly. I hope so, Okonkwo replied. Because the galaxy needs to understand it. Real strength isn't about having the biggest weapons or the most ships. It's about having the power to destroy and choosing to build instead. The Senate forgot that. They thought civilization meant never having to fight, but real civilization means knowing how to fight and choosing not to, unless there's no other choice. In the Senate chamber, Chen finished her speech. The galaxy underestimated humans. That was a fatal error, fatal to the idea that might makes right, fatal to the assumption that age means wisdom, fatal to the belief that following old rules is the same as being civilized. We didn't come here to conquer, we came to belong, and now we do. Not because you gave us permission, but because we proved we deserve it. She bowed formally. Thank you for the lesson. We hope we taught you something valuable in return. The applause that followed was genuine, without the condescension that had marked her first speech 5 years ago. The Senate had learned. The galaxy had learned. They had underestimated humanity. It was an error they would never make again. The end.